Today, we have a very important conversation, and we'll be joined by some of our colleagues during the Overdrive segment in a few minutes. Hopefully, we'll have Hesher and possibly Basil Valentine, I'm not sure, joining us on the live link there. But nonetheless, here we are, and the title of today's program is The Guns of August. What's that all about? We're at the end of August. You're probably asking, what guns? This is the 31st, so we're live on the 31st. What are you talking about, Patrick? Well, I'll tell you what we're talking about. We'll bring the show post up here, and just to give you a little bit of an insight into our thoughts on this. Here you can see Donald Trump there. One of the rare photos where he's looking pensive. He might even be thinking about something, although we're not sure what. And there's Vladimir Putin, and of course, the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran. So here's the problem with Trump, and this is what we're going to talk about. This is the main problem. He talks this ball game about peace. That's all you hear. Oh, we're going to get a deal. I've stopped 7 wars. Netanyahu nominated me for the Nobel Peace Prize. And he talks a lot about peace. He campaigned on the peace ticket. He managed to parlay millions of votes because he said he was going to end the war in Ukraine. And he's going to bring peace to the Middle East. And he's different than Biden. That was his campaign pitch. But everything he does says war. Everything Donald Trump does says war. Everything comes out of his mouth is all about peace. But everything he does shows that he is pursuing escalation, both with Russia in Ukraine and also with Iran via his best friend, our greatest friend and ally, the only democracy in the Middle East, the world's most moral army, Israel. So the story goes. So the Hasbara marketing pitch goes. So that's Donald Trump. And I think we can say the escalation levels are getting so dangerous now that we can say, let's dispense with the whole peace gambit. He said, he hung his whole campaign that he was going to end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. Now, if I was president, I could do it in 24 hours. It's very simple. You just cut off the spigot. No weapons, no cash. Get to the negotiation table. Be prepared to make concessions. And if you don't like it, fine. We'll, take on Russia, Zelensky. Go ahead. Go fight. Keep fighting the Russians and see how far you get. The war is lost for Ukraine. Everything from this point on is just provocations, antagonizations, and really kind of pushing the situation towards some kind of a chaotic crescendo that's going to end in an escalation of this conflict. They probably think in Europe they can pull back from the brink. These psychopaths, Frederick Merz, Emmanuel Macron. I'm going to play you something or show you something from Macron. I mean, this guy's in hot water. Candace Owens has him right against the ropes. And so what's he doing? He's doubling down on World War III. France says they're threatened by Russia. How exactly? Is Russia sending bed bugs to Airbnb flats in Paris? I mean, because that's what the French media have been saying. Interesting, isn't it? It's just getting ridiculous. Going from ridiculous to a farce to, I think, some kind of a crazy Faustian conclusion that we're heading towards with both theaters, both with Ukraine and with Israel. So let's take a look at this. Title of today's program, Guns of War. Why? This is the classic book by Barbara Tuchman, or The Guns of August. The Guns of August. I said The Guns of War. The Guns of August, Pulitzer Prize winning classic book. More than anything, this book shows the level of hubris. It shows the level of ignorance to the point where the elite class of the day, this is prior to World War I, that there was this consensus that formed at the elite level. You have to remember, you still got a collection of royals, of some democratic governments, but many constitutional monarchies, Britain included. And so these aren't sort of modern democratic states, newly democratic states in some cases, new countries altogether in the case of Germany, and so on and so forth. So what is the Guns of August? This is there's some great quotes in here. I mean, you just go from the chapter 1 straight off the bat. Barbara Tuchman just kind of nails it. But I love this passage here. I just picked this one out. This is from The Guns of August by Pulitzer Prize winning Barbara Tuchman. And she says, describing the scene prior to World War I, so gorgeous was the spectacle on the May morning of 1910 when 9 kings rode into the funeral of Edward VII of England, that the crown, waiting in hushed and black-clad awe, could not keep back gasps of admiration. The sun of the old world was setting in a dying blaze of splendor, never to be seen again. What does this remind you of, ladies and gentlemen? You think about that passage. That's prior to World War I. There was this consensus among elites of inevitability that there would be war, that there would be conflict. And we see the exact same thing now. This inevitability from European leaders. They will not go to the negotiation table. They'll do anything. They're kicking and screaming in London, in Paris, in Berlin. These so-called elected leaders, kicking and screaming. They're desperate. They're dying for war. They're talking about conscription. They're saying Russia's the greatest threat to democracy in the world, and so forth. It's almost religious fervor. It's almost religious level, like democracy is the new Christianity. But the Western European states are anything but democratic. That's the problem. They talk about Putin, the authoritarian, but they won't allow RT to be even visible to the European public. But if you go to Moscow, the BBC has a bureau in Moscow. NBC reports from Moscow. ABC reports from Moscow. All the Western mainstream are there. They can cover whatever they want there. But any Russian media, of which there's only one or two, one English language, RT, it's banned in the West because apparently it's too dangerous for us, the plebs, to read. So our government has decided they're going to censor, entire swaths of the information space in international politics, supposedly because we're not smart enough to, decipher what they call, quote, Russian disinformation. But if you read their reporting in RT, it's all factual. You might not like the fact that it's slanted the way it is, what they might call the Russian narrative, but most of it's pretty objective, pretty arbitrary. They report a lot on Hungary, on Slovakia, the countries dissenting against this losing war in Ukraine. So who are the enemies of democracy? They're passing online censorship legislation like it's going out of style in the West. Why are they panicking? What are they preparing for? So this brings us back to the Guns of August. Because everything that our leaders in the West are saying about Ukraine, about the conflict, is a lie. And this goes pretty deep. And what I might say now is going to be viewed by some maybe as controversial, but I just call it like I see it. I'm an analyst, so I'm always looking at things from different points of view. So even some of the top commentators in our alternative space, many of whom you'll find on Judge Napolitano's program, and these people get top billing. And when they're asked point blank, what's the causes of this conflict, some of these top commentators will say, well, it's NATO enlargement. It's the threat. Russia had to invade Ukraine because they felt threatened because of NATO enlargement, that Ukraine couldn't become a NATO state, or there couldn't be nukes in Ukraine, etc. Well, in a certain way, this is theoretically true, but that's not the reason why Russia launched the SMO and entered the Donbass and Ukraine in February 25th, 2022. It's not because of NATO enlargement. So by people saying that, and I saw a debate recently, and the American person in the debate was actually giving ground on that point, saying, yes, yeah, well, NATO enlargement is viewed as a threat to Russia. They're sort of conceding there, but they don't want to talk about all the actual reasons why Russia actually deployed in what they call a special military operation. The debate I'm talking about was on a program called Going Underground. Again, people in the West are not allowed to watch it. It's hosted by one of the best hosts doing a talk show probably anywhere, Afshin Rattanzi, highly skilled. And he had a senior fellow from the Brookings Institute on. I think his name's Michael O'Hanlon. I debated him once on Crosstalk years ago. Can't remember what we were debating. Maybe it was Ukraine or Syria or U.S. foreign policy. But the problem is the Americans will cede that point. Even slightly centrist debaters like O'Hanlon, Beltway insider, career think tanker, but he doesn't want to talk about the actual reasons. And the actual reasons are quite simple. There was a unanimous United Nations Security Council resolution 2202 that's mandated to implement the Minsk peace process. When is the last time you had a unanimous UN Security Council resolution? It's pretty rare, isn't it? Normally, the U.S. is vetoing it on behalf of Israel, or Britain's vetoing it, or Russia's vetoing it, or China's vetoing it. Unanimous. The guarantors were Germany and France. France is a member of the UN Security Council. They're in the nuclear club, the top club. Germany at the time, Chancellor Angela Merkel. France at the time, Francois Hollande, President Hollande. Okay. They were the guarantors that they would implement the Minsk protocols, bring peace to the Donbass, and stop a violent civil war. Violent civil war. Why? Ukraine had deployed its military against its own people. It declared the entire Donbass, or particularly Donetsk and Lugansk, we're talking about, as persona non grata. Did not give them representation in parliament, enacted a policy of lustration, and deployed the military against them in what Petro Poroshenko, the U.S. puppet that was installed after Maidan, called an anti-terror operation, which means everyone in Luhansk and Donetsk was a terrorist. And upwards of 14,000 people died, many civilians, after that period when that offensive was launched by Kiev, backed by NATO, in May of 2014. The Minsk protocols were drafted, Minsk 1 and 2, to stop this bloodshed. Zelensky comes into to power after Poroshenko. The next puppet, Zelensky, the actor, sitcom star, it was a running joke in Ukraine, and all of a sudden the joke became real. He became president. The guy who's acting as a president in the sitcom becomes president, just like that. So he comes in, and in 2021, he orders a final solution, a major offensive, a military buildup with the full backing of NATO on every single conceivable level. Mind you, Merkel and Hollande admit they intentionally sandbagged the Minsk Accords to buy time, quote, to buy time to arm Ukraine to NATO standard. They knew the war was coming. They just needed the trigger. They needed the trigger. And that trigger was provided by Zelensky. A Tet offensive, the equivalent of a Tet offensive. And it was ready to go and began February of 2022. That's why Russia deployed and intervened when they did. In American language, I'll borrow the language of Samantha Power. Russia launched an R2P operation, responsibility to protect. A humanitarian intervention. How about that? That sounds good, doesn't it? That's the basis of the United States deployments, unprovoked wars against Yugoslavia, via NATO in that case, Libya, via NATO, Iraq. We can go on and on. I count Syria in there, although it was a proxy war. There was direct military activity from the U.S. and its allies. Responsibility to protect. UN Charter, Article 1 and Article 51 were both at play in the Donbass. The right for self-determination from the People's Republic of Donetsk and Lugansk, enshrined in the UN Charter, like it or not. If your government raises the military and is slaughtering you, you have the right to raise a militia to defend yourself. And that was part of Ukraine, Donbass, lest we forget. Article 51, right to self-defense. Responsibility to protect, R2P, is based on those principles. Russia could have intervened at any time after 2014, but they didn't. The West claimed they did, said there were little green men running around. Remember that? Little green men? They had to invent a Russian deployment. It's so pathetic. They still use this term in U.S. media. The only little green man is the one in Kiev. So that's what actually happened. That's what actually happened. And it was all done by the book. Donetsk and Lugansk declared independence from Ukraine, were then recognized by the Russian Federation, and then ascension into Russia. The old Novorossiya, which was many, many years ago, was effectively reunited. Russian populations reunited with Mother Russia, same way Crimea was reunited with Russia. It was previously Russia. It's mostly Russians. So these are details that nobody wants to talk about. They just say NATO enlargement. Okay, fine, but that implies that Russia's invasion, as they call it, or special military operation, is illegal. But you can make a legal argument based on what I just said. You see, is what I'm telling you way too complicated for your average Western politician, Western mainstream media host, Western journalist, Western pseudo-intellectual think tank, pseudo-scholar. What I've just laid out to you is facts. And we can pull up plenty of data to back it up. I mean, half of it is already documented at the United Nations level anyway. and the OSCE and all these other multilateral organizations. It's all documented. So this isn't Russian propaganda, I'm telling you. It's reality. It's very rich for Europe and the United States to be crying, Putin's full-scale invasion. I wrote down all the talking points because on Going Underground, he just rattled them all off, all the boilerplate talking points. What Russia did was immoral. Putin's full-scale invasion. They invaded a sovereign nation. That's very rich of an American to be like hot under the collar for somebody invading a sovereign nation. I mean, America's never done that, have they? They never bombed them either. And Israel. Putin did it out of a sense of wounded pride. I haven't worked that one out. Still trying to work that one out. He's killed off dissidents. Putin's killing off the dissidents. Most of the dissidents have been killed off, according to some of these American pundits. Like who? Okay. NATO never moved combat formations east of West Germany until 2022. The attack on 2022. The Russians' invasion. I mean, that's a joke. The NATO drills in the Black Sea, the Baltics, NATO bases in Poland. Does that count as east of West Germany? I don't know. U.S. bases in Poland? I think it counts. Yeah, I think that counts. I mean, Putin's imperial ambition, blah, 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 blah. So we're living on lies. And that's why I'm highlighting the Guns of August in the theme of this program, because they were also living on lies as well before World War I. These people in Europe have just lost their minds. And here's Emmanuel Macron, and let me blow this up full screen here. Emmanuel Macron said in a recent interview about Putin, he's a predator. He's like your wife. He's a predator, Macron says of Putin. An ogre at our gates, an ogre, like an orc, an ogre at our gates. Emmanuel Macron warns of Russia's threat to Europe. Vladimir Putin is a predator, an ogre at our gates, who needs to continue eating for his own survival. So eating Europe, says Macron. Emmanuel Macron warned this Tuesday in an interview on LCI, calling on Europeans not to be naive about Russia. The president of the Republic of France, how he's president is quite a miracle in itself. Macron affirmed that it, quote, has become a lasting destabilizing force and a potential threat to many of us. Is there any evidence about this? No. So NATO's advancing eastward. Let me get this straight. Let me try to hang with Macron on the logic here. So NATO is steamrolling east, surrounding Russia, but Russia is the biggest threat to Europe. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? Has Russia attacked France? No. Russia was doing plenty of business with France before all this kicked off. Quite happily. Good trading partners, Russia and France. In fact, Russia even ordered a major naval frigate, a Mistral, from the French government, and France basically yanked it out from under them after Crimea bolted from Ukraine. So he's basically, there's the dehumanization of Putin and the Hitlerization of Putin from a guy that's just barely elected, some kind of a flimsy coalition government, who is basically running scared from an American podcaster who basically has him banged to rights on his very strange wife, and who knows what else. So, I mean, these are the sort of dysfunctional degenerates running around calling themselves leaders in Europe. They're desperate for a war because, quite frankly, they're failing in the polls. They're not popular. They're about to be ousted. What Macron is going to do in September, watch. He will make the ultimate authoritarian power grab. Just watch, and we'll be covering it. It's going to happen. We'll talk more about that later. This guy is so desperate. Candace Owens has ruined his life. It's glorious on one level, frightening on another. So here is Friedrich Merz being asked in an interview about what Macron said. And the smugness is just something unbelievable. But listen to this.
Emmanuel Macron il y a quelques jours, et il avait cette expression, il disait « Poutine est un ogre qui veut manger toujours davantage ». Wie sagt man ogre? Comment est-ce qu'on dit ogre auf Deutsch? Kinderfressen?
Ja, oui. Il y a des versions assez vulgaires.
Est-ce que vous reprenez ce mot? Est-ce que vous pourriez utiliser ce mot?
Oui, c'est comme ça que je vois Poutine. Il déstabilise des grandes parties de notre pays. Il fait de l'ingérence partout, dans les activités sur les réseaux sociaux notamment. Selon nos services de renseignement, nous savons pertinemment que tous les jours, il attaque nos infrastructures et que tous les jours, il essaie d'exercer une influence sur l'opinion publique. Donc nous sommes déjà dans un conflit avec la Russie.
I mean, seriously, what is wrong with these people? So Merz, that's the Chancellor of Germany, another flimsy sort of coalition leader, basically saying Russia's destabilizing large parts of Germany. Like how? Because they say there's malign influence on social media. In other words, people with opinions. It's terrorizing the German government. They can't handle it. Any opposition viewpoints. This guy is really something. I mean, he is real. I mean, he's a lightweight, I think, intellectually, and he is just so, you know, under the thumb of the United States, like more than anybody you've ever seen before. But at the same time, these people will undermine any genuine overtures towards a political or peaceful negotiation or eventual political settlement in Ukraine. And that's the problem, is Trump's going around saying, oh, I'm going to bring peace and all this. He can't stop the Europeans or Zelensky from sabotaging whatever, even if he would manage to do anything. Okay. So now, well, we'll leave that for the moment. We'll go back to Trump. And this is the reality. 150 THAAD missiles. These are the high altitude interceptors, ballistic missile interceptors, fired by the U.S. That's over a quarter of the U.S. stock when Iran was pelting Israel. So the U.S. are moving a lot of the remaining stock right now into Israel, along with the Aegis missile defense systems and so forth. So they're planning for, there's going to be a war against Iran. It's coming. Okay, they're planning for it. And they're just not telling you. Okay. I'm sad to say that this is the last gasp, desperate move by Israel. And Donald Trump has just ordered, after all this Alaska carry-on, this is just today, giving Ukraine a new tranche of missiles and with the capability of striking deeper into Russian territory, says NATO Ambassador Matt Whitaker. Deeper strike, quote, deeper strike capabilities. Deeper strike capabilities. That's Trump. After all this Alaska peace carry on. Okay, do you trust these people? Don't trust a word these people say. They are lying, and they will continue to lie. So for Ukraine and for Israel, Trump is escalating. So don't listen to what he says. Look at what he does. That's what I'm telling our audience. Don't be fooled. Okay. And look at, there's the Del Boy of diplomacy. So this is the guy, the de facto Secretary of State. Marco Rubio's just sending out Christmas cards right now. I mean, he doesn't actually do anything. This is the envoy. This is the guy, Steve Witkoff, a total charlatan, Donald Trump's property bro, who basically works for Israel. And the Russia thing is a side hustle. It's a side hustle for Del Boy. If you're British, you know what I'm talking about. Steve Witkoff is the Del Boy of diplomacy. The Del Boy of diplomacy. I go ahead and coin that. I started using that about a month ago. He's the Del Boy of diplomacy. A total charlatan. Does nothing. Does nothing. Traffics in rumors and say, well, we spoke about this and the Russians agreed upon that and we're agreeing on this, and then nothing's written down, nothing's documented. It's all BS. It's Del Boy. It's David Jason with a suit. And Trump's next to them, not a whole lot smarter either. Even if Donald Trump wanted to do the right thing, even if somehow he had an epiphany, and by some magic act of divine intervention, he downloaded everything I told you in the first 15 minutes, and he was able to talk truth with the Russians and put Zelensky in his place and put Biden in his place, quite frankly, and Obama, because they were the architects of the destabilization of Ukraine. It was a U.S.-backed coup in Maidan. Look at what preceded that. Look at what happened after. Look at what Victoria Nuland was doing. How can you say the United States did not engineer everything? And they brought this to a military head in the Donbass to push Russia as far as they could. And they had all along, they've been preparing for the war they knew was coming. And they desperate to get Russia to, quote, invade on humanitarian grounds, responsibility to protect grounds, national security grounds, all of the above, and pushing back, obviously, NATO expansion. That should be at the bottom of the list, not at the top. And they were ready, because the minute they did that, they were ready to put sanctions on Russia, and they believed that this would break the Russian economy and break the Putin regime, as they call it. That was the plan. The sanctions were already prepared. All of that stuff snapped into place within 24 hours after February 25th, 2022. This was all by design. All of it. But what I'm telling you, these two clowns that you see on screen here, they don't even know half of this because these details are too complicated for them. They deal with the Teamsters, cement, plumbing, landscaping, bank financing, and remortgaging and refinancing their debt. That's what these guys do. They're good at that, but they're really crap at international relations, diplomacy, and having even a modicum of understanding of geopolitics and the history of grand strategy, all which are prerequisites to doing even entry-level diplomacy. Instead, we've got these clowns. And these clowns are baiting the guns of August style scenario. These guys, dangerous. And I don't even want to get into the Israeli conversation. That's something else. That's even worse. So Trump is a nightmare. Trump is an actual nightmare. He's very dangerous. And I would say this guy is probably a weaker president than Biden because he is completely a sock puppet of the Israeli lobby. Why? How can you be that controlled by a tiny foreign country? How? There's a lot of answers, potential theories for that. A lot of people are, the Epstein files certainly come up. The fact that Benjamin Netanyahu's best family friend married into the Trump family and is running Middle East policy. Do any Americans have a problem with that? I mean, just beyond the nepotism. And they're talking about Kushner and co. turning Gaza into a Riviera, had Tony Blair in Washington. These guys are running around with Tony Blair. Trump, Tony Blair, and Kushner and Witkoff deciding how they're going to carve up Gaza into the next Dubai. That's what happened this week. Does any alarm bells, any red flags? Does anybody see any problem with this? But the problem, they have to get rid of the natives. There's people living there called Palestinians. They've got to get rid of them. So why don't we destroy all their hospitals, all their homes? Let's cut off food. Let's cut off water. Let's cut off electricity. Let's cut off aid. And let's bomb them. And maybe they'll leave. And whoever doesn't leave, well, we're just going to have to, do what the tiny mustache man called the final solution. Because that's what's happening. And this is all okay. Most Americans couldn't give a flying you-know-what. Certainly Fox News is cool with all of this. So this is the same level of insanity that preceded the First World War. But I will argue that it's even worse. And again, we'll go back to that fantastic quote by Barbara Tuchman. We have to bring that up on screen once more. And the second part I'm talking about, second paragraph, the sun of the old world was setting in a dying blaze of splendor, never to be seen again. We're talking about this establishment today. They are going down in a blaze of glory, and they don't care if they have to take the rest of the world with them. They'll sacrifice the rest of us at the altar of their vanity. That is the old world order. The Anglo-American-led world order. They don't care. For them, for Macron, for Starmer, for the British and American elites, for the NATO glad-handers, this is an existential crisis. All of their old world orders crumbling. And they don't know what to do. They still have the same playbook they are running for 300 years. They don't know what to do. So wow, let's just get another war on. And we'll reset the economy. This is how these people have been operating forever. And they keep doing it. And then they claim they care about you. So they care about their electorate. I don't think so. They don't. It's pretty obvious by now. So anyway, that's what we're talking about this week. There's a lot more to say. Let's go to break right now, and when we connect with a couple of our teammates, and we'll also showcase some of the smart and insightful comments from our listeners who actually know what's going on. I'm Patrick Henningsen. This is the Sunday Wire. We will be right back in just a few minutes. Enjoy the music. Latest single from Peter Conway.
We don't need war, we need peace. We need to find a release from the ties that bind our minds, from the constraints that rule our lives. Politics has failed again. Power's in the hands of dangerous men, with their fury and their rage, and minds bent with fear, greed and hate. They're dropping bombs again. They don't know that all lives are heaven sent. Time to stop the genocide, the warmongering in our times. Now is the time. It's time for us to visualize a world where peace will shine. Now is the time. Now is the time. Now's the time for change. Tell me, do you feel the same? For here we stand in the name of love. All peoples of the world as one. The revelation needed on the street is that we're more powerful than we believe. What they don't want us to know is that the light of love we shine they can't control. The other day I spoke to God. She said to me, share this message in a song. It's time to stop the genocide, the warmongering in our times. Now is the time. It's time for us to visualize a world where peace will shine. Now is the time. Now is the time. We don't need war, we need peace. We need to come together in unity. We can change the world tonight when we let love be our guiding light. It's time to stop the genocide, the warmongering in our times now. Now is the time. It's time for us to visualize a world where peace will shine now. Now is the time. It's time to heal dividing lines for the sake of humankind now. Now is the time. It's time for us to realize we're all one in God's mind now. Now is the time. Now is the time. We don't need war, we need peace. We don't need war, we need peace. We don't need war, we need